The article that I decided to cover, because this is near and dear to my heart and it scarred my childhood and my young adulthood, is an article about seminary. And we're talking early morning seminary. If we have viewers or listeners that don't know what that is, it's kind of extra religious instruction. You go to a classroom for Mormon teens. And in some places in the United States, there's a building right next to your high school or your junior high, and you can just walk next door. It's an extra period where you don't get to take an elective. But for those of us that grew up not in Morador, early morning was usually how you had to do it. And when I say early, I mean early. So this article is called "There Are No Easy Answers. LDS Parents Wonder If Early Morning Seminary is Worth the Health Costs. Is rising before dawn for religious study laudable or lamentable? Research increasingly shows the dangers of sleep deprivation of high schoolers." So it says LDS parents wonders. My LDS parents did not wonder at all in the late 70s and early 80s at all. I was going and there was no way around it. So it says Latter-day Saints teens living in Utah and other areas with high numbers of church members often have the option of attending seminary during the school day in a building off campus. Like I said, for others, the 4-year program represents more than a chance for teens to pore over their sacred texts together. It's a rite of passage, a way for young people to signal their commitment to their faith by laying sleep on the altar of study. And that is true. It's definitely viewed that way. Someone in the article said, "I attended the seminary kickoff before the school year." This is a mother in Las Vegas with 2 kids in seminary. "It was built up and presented as a life-changing experience that comes when you make a huge sacrifice." That is true. And I still kind of find myself in that trap. The slide I'm going to show you next is me bragging and also wanting to get a lot of sympathy for what I had to do when I was 15 and 16 years old. So this was my personal early morning seminary schedule. I wish I would have taken a picture of myself in the morning, but I didn't. So at 4:45, I would get woken up by my parents for personal scripture study. And so that meant that I'd be laying in bed. My dad would come and, knock me on the shoulder, prop my scriptures up in front of me, open, kind of held open by a pillow. And I would lay there like this, and I would soak in the scriptures. That was my scripture study for 15 minutes, my personal scripture study. So at 5 a.m., I'd get dressed, sometimes just like pajama bottoms, sweatshirt. I mean, it was dark outside still. You can picture 5:15, the carpool arrives. Or if you're the one driving, if you're 16 and you can drive, then you have to leave, start everything about half an hour earlier. 5:15 it arrives and you drive across town if you're me, and 5:45 in the morning is when seminary starts. And I couldn't remember exactly how long seminary was. Neither of you guys went, but I think it was about an hour. And then we drive back across town, go home,
I think
get
it's
ready.
like 50 minutes.
Yeah, and go to school. So that right there, I want all the sympathy and empathy that you can give to me. That was my schedule. And it's funny because I kept a journal like a lot of teenagers. And when I reread those years, the first line, almost every single page is, "I'm so tired. I was so tired today. I could hardly keep my eyes open today. I fell asleep today." That just repeats over and over and over in all of my seminary journals. And that's what this article is about. So they're talking about a mounting body of evidence indicates that teens not only need more sleep than adults, but also that hormonal shifts make it harder for them to go to bed before 10 or 11. And I remember that, trying to go to bed early, but you just can't fall asleep. And at the same time, researchers have gained a clearer picture of the risks associated with teen sleep deprivation. Among them are serious mental health issues and also substance abuse. Taken together, these findings are prompting Latter-day Saint parents to reevaluate the benefits of sending their teens out to study scriptures at the crack of dawn. Now, am I right in saying that neither of you guys, you both joined the church as older teenagers, so you never did have to do this? Is that
I was
right?
just wondering, yes, you're the only one. So I'm wondering, was it mental health issues, serious mental health issues, or substance abuse in your case?
Yeah, I knew you were going to ask that. I literally, as I read that, knew you would say that. So
I thought maybe you're going to tell us something.
no, I don't have any other slide about my own personal life. We'll just be general from here on out. So,
Okay.
but it's interesting to me that in my day, LDS parents weren't saying that. There was never a question, is this good for my child? Even though I'm sure my parents saw me like a zombie, walking around, because then you have after school activities. You don't get home till late in the evening. And then the cycle starts up again. 4:30, here you go, read your scriptures. But apparently now LDS parents are sort of looking at their kids and going, I wonder if this is the best choice. So we get into some data about from sleep experts. So as sleep expert Matthew Walker explains in a book, Why We Sleep, adolescents are hardwired to hit the sack after most adults, thanks to a 1 to 3 hour shift forward in their circadian rhythm. In other words, adults and teens are essentially living in different time zones. I thought that was really interesting. I wish I'd known that before. That would have helped me with my own kids. They're literally in another time zone than you are. Meanwhile, researchers have begun to raise an ever louder din regarding the dangers associated with sleep deprivation in young adults. Tired teens, studies recently have discovered, are more prone to major depression and risky behavior, including drug experimentation. One study published in 2023 found that sleep-deprived adolescents were about twice as prone to suicide ideation and consideration, even when adjusting for sexual identity, trauma, bullying, and other related factors. Another published the year before suggested a possible link between poor adolescent sleep and increased risk of schizophrenia. So the data is basically saying, parents, beware. Be aware of your teenager. Take a look at what they're doing and maybe reassess. Of course, this is very difficult because we're talking about the church has asked you to do this. And so that's what I mean. There's a difference, I think, in parents today. So, church spokesman Sam Penrod said that the faith is aware of the concerns of some parents and the research involving the well-being of high school students. Of equal note, he says, studies are indicating a strong positive link between faith and religious community in the overall health and mental wellness of young people. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, in addition to Sunday worship and the weekly summertime activities, they often enroll in seminary. So he's saying, yes, we understand that, but it's really important to bond with your friends, get the instruction. You have to make sure that you do that too. So it's sort of something that they're basically leaving it up to parents to decide, and the parents are now starting to put it more on the kids. I thought was interesting. And some of the things I read that they're saying, well, it's up to you. In my day, that wasn't the case. You go, it's my way or the highway to seminary. That's the only thing that you did.
It sounds like Sam Penrod is saying, yeah, we understand about the apples, but look at these oranges over here.
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's exactly it. So they go on to talk about how there are some different options. Like I said, there's during school seminary, but of course that means you give up an elective. And some of these kids today, they just absolutely pack their schedule. They're getting into college. They're in band. They're in debate. They're in theater. Seminary means that you give up an elective. There is also the option in some places for online seminary. So that could be something too. Let's see. They talked to a parent, Jed Fowers, of a seminary-aged kids, and also a volunteer seminary teacher himself. And I think we'll have Bill talk about that in a minute, because he himself just told us that he was an early morning seminary teacher. So that'll be interesting to hear about. Anyway, in 2022, this particular teacher went on Facebook, and it was a page for fellow seminary instructors. And he asked the question, is there a better way? Is this a problem? Are we doing something that's detrimental to the kids? In his post, he cited the research about teens and sleep. Within a few days, he had close to 200 responses on a page that usually had about 10 or 20 responses. Clearly, he had hit a nerve. Of the responses, nearly 70 defended the current model, of course, but just as many voiced their similar concerns. So I thought that was kind of interesting that even seminary teachers are questioning, because they're the ones that have to look out into the class and see my AI there of a kid just going, oh my goodness. I do remember a lot of sleeping in seminary. A lot of kids just wore their pajamas, put their heads down on their desk. It was just impossible to keep anybody awake. They also go on to talk about just a family getting everybody out the door at 5:30 in the morning. It can cause a lot of contention. Everybody's struggling. They're tired. They're going. They've got to drive across town. It's not a peaceful way to start the day. And they also, of course, talk, like I just mentioned, on the demands of, a full schedule, basketball practice, band practice, our kids having to give up other activities that also give you a sense of community, form friendships just for seminary. So it's definitely a question. But again, the bottom line is the church has said seminary is the most important place that you're supposed to be. So another parent kind of weighs in and says it's reasonable to question early morning seminary and say, is this the only way? So parents are starting to see it. What this particular parent is less comfortable with is the secondary importance that seminary seems to take in scheduling students' lives. Teens gathering to study the scriptures each weekday with an engaged and committed adult, like a Bill Reel, to study this is powerful, she said, and it deserves to be a priority. So again, it's that, what's your priority? What's more important to you? Is it important that your kids get this kind of instruction and this kind of, group setting? Or now you're reading the research about sleep and you're not sure exactly what to do. So the really interesting part, of course, is one voice has been completely and conspicuously absent from the conversation these parents and seminary teachers are having with the church itself. We wish there was some kind of mechanism to engage with leaders of the church educational system that oversees seminary program about how the current program is working and perhaps how it could evolve to better help youth deepen their conversion to the gospel. After all, they reason, isn't that the point? And a lot of things that I read said that individual stakes and wards kind of decide on how seminary works. They kind of poll the parents and decide what time is going to work. But again, what works for one parent is not going to work for another family. So it becomes a difficult issue, and there are a lot of feelings about it. So I decided that I would go out onto Ex-Mormon Reddit, of course, because that's where I go to get all of my information. And I put up a post and I said, hey, early morning seminary, anybody do it? Pros and cons. There were some really funny answers about pros, but there were some actual sincere answers. So I'm going to read a couple of these because I think these are representational of how I felt when I went to seminary, and I bet a lot of you did. So one person wrote that a con, of course, is overly tired and sleepy due to being a teenager and barely getting anything out of it, getting to school constantly exhausted from having to wake up at 5:30 every morning and hitting the wall around 1 o'clock. That's exactly right. And barely able to stay awake. And then due to constant exhaustion and sleepiness, some kids are out there on the road driving to church, putting themselves and others at risk. Many times I got to the church sort of amazed at how quickly we got there because I was sort of half asleep the entire time driving. And that is exactly my experience. You kind of go, oh, I woke up. Here we are. Oh, good. We're all okay. So, people have strong feelings about this. Someone else writes, waking up at 4:30 every morning. I wonder if this was one of my high school friends. That was our schedule. Severe sleep deprivation in high school, not seeing the sun for half the year. Yeah, because you're up before dawn. Unable to do jazz band or AP calculus, lifelong sleep issues, and also religious indoctrination. So that was interesting. Let's see. Another one is waking up so early for the 6 a.m. start. Often had to have family scripture reading before leaving for seminary. Okay, whoever this is, I got you there. That's what we did. And not being able to take a 0-period class like driver's ed. Car wrecks from racing to school after seminary, and one fairly serious. I actually saw that too in my days in seminary. I thought this was a very comprehensive one as a con. This person says, let me see if I can get to it. It literally effed with my sleep schedule so badly and sucked away my mental and physical health because I was not getting the sleep I needed in order to grow and function as a human being. I would get yelled at for sleeping and napping in the middle of the day because I had untreated insomnia and would only get 3 or 4 hours sleep max. And I would sleep 12 hours on the weekend. Not to mention and this is something they didn't bring up in the articles, but this is my experience too. Not to mention I was not eating breakfast or lunch because I had to be out the door first thing in the morning. 5 o'clock in the morning. I did not get to eat most of the time, and I had one giant meal at home, which I usually made myself when I had no energy at the end of the day. I was snacking 80% of the time. I always felt hungry, sleep deprived during school hours, which effed with my grades badly. Then I had to stand at a freezing cold bus stop for an entire hour, which led to getting some nerve damage on my nose, ears, toes, and fingertips for a while that took years to heal, and I'm assuming was mild frostbite. Yeah, I do remember waiting for my carpool out in the cold, freezing weather. Not to mention, I learned nothing from the lessons. The lessons were literally worthless in every aspect to me because our teacher wouldn't even be teaching half the time. And maybe I'll email ad for Bill or show up, right? They'd go on some tangent and then hand out homework as if real school didn't already give us enough stress, none of which I ever filled out because I barely was getting my real homework done. It was goddamn awful for me personally, and I will never, ever do anything similar ever again. So this person has some very strong feelings. They definitely vented about seminary. Now, I was trying to be fair, and I wanted to see if anybody could come up with any positives. And I have to say, I agree with almost all of these pros. And these are from people from the perspective of being a kid, not the perspective of a parent who said, I sent my kid and it helped them. These are kids. So here's somebody who says, as a pro to seminary, I actually think it beneficial to study the New Testament in a classroom setting. I was asked to read the text in depth on a daily basis. Long story short, it did not increase my faith. I noticed a big difference between what the church said and what this guy, whose name is the one on the building, allegedly said. It was one of my first shelf items, and it also gave me the basic information to discuss my faith crisis internally and with others. So I thought that was great. Another person said, we would carpool to high school after seminary as the sun rose. We listened to Imagine Dragons, Radioactive. It was brand new back then, with the bass all the way up, and sing along. I felt like the coolest teenager ever and really valued those friendships, especially since I didn't have friends in high school. The chance to hang out with my church friends every morning before school was kind of nice. And that's true. You have the camaraderie, you have the friendship, and you're doing something extremely hard. Getting up early, you're kind of all in it together. So I agree with that too. There is not real personal gain from seminary. It's just an indoctrination program, of which the church has many. I know a friend who got sent to Hong Kong for his mission, and the church used his 4 years attending seminary school as proof that he was a trained missionary and needed a visa. I had never thought of that you could use the seminary experience as sort of evidence that you could get a visa as being a minister. If there's any pro to seminary, it's only for the church and not for the student. Another person said, some teachers made us hot chocolate and some cute boys were in my class. That is true. Early morning seminary teachers did tend to bring treats and donuts and things like that. And maybe this was my favorite. I don't know. My buddy, the bishop's son, brought porn and beer to share, assuming after seminary, on the walk to school. So there it is. That's it.
It's always those bishop kids.
It is. It's always the bishop kids. So now I didn't know this before the show. I asked both I assumed RFM no, because you joined when you were older than high school, but I wondered about Bill. And he said, why don't you tell us what you said about seminary? You do have some experience.
Tell him myself. So go ahead.
You are the engaged and committed adult they referred to it.
Oh yeah. So I was going to Bowling Green State University to be an elementary teacher. So under the spirit of discernment, the bishopric prayed about who the next seminary teacher should be for the Sandusky ward. They prayed about me. They actually had two seminary teachers. I would teach the Sandusky kids that were close that way, and then there would be another seminary teacher that would teach the kids that were further away from the ward building. Some of these kids would drive a half hour to come to the ward building to have seminary. I was just a 19, 20, 21-year-old kid. I don't remember how old I was, but I was young, newly married, and serving as a seminary teacher in so many times. I only did it 1 year. That's because I failed at it miserably and they gave up on me. But so many times that year, the alarm would go off. I'd be half asleep because it was too damn early for me too. And I would think I was pushing the snooze button and I would push the off button, and off to sleep I went. And next thing you know, I'd get a phone call from the ward building, from the kids actually out in their car with their parents, and calling and saying, where's the seminary teacher at? Or why are you not here? And I would say, I'm really sorry. I'm not going to make it in today. And that happens so many times that those kids still have a certain degree of trauma that they've carried with them from driving a half hour, 40 minutes to the ward building with no seminary teacher there to open it up and do seminary. So I failed. Sorry, folks.
Yeah. I think you did the best you could. It's rough. And it makes me think, why not just call the parents that are carpooling? They have to drive there anyway. I mean, before before I could drive, when I was 15, we had a wonderful mother in the neighborhood, and she would get all of us kids and load us in her station wagon. This is again leaving at 5:15 in the morning. She did this every day, and she would park the station wagon in the seminary building parking lot. She would climb into a sleeping bag in the back of the station wagon, and she would sleep there and wait for us to come out. And we thought it was kind of funny. We kind of, teased about it. But as a grown-up, as a mother, I salute you, because who would do that? This woman was committed. And I believe she was committed to our, eternal salvation, because otherwise, why would she do this? It was amazing.
Indeed. And I've got one comment for Bill, then one for Rebecca. Bill, I'm sorry, it's not mass hysteria, of course, it's mass confusion. Father's Day in West Virginia. Okay, so I want to correct that. And Rebecca, do you have your dog with you next to you on the couch?
Oh my gosh. Again, seriously.
Do you?
I do, but she's asleep. Maybe she won't growl.
You can't hold her up, can you? She won't let you hold her.
Oh,
What's
no,
her name?
She's so sweet. Her name's Alice. She's really
Alice.
cute and blonde.
You know why you couldn't take Alice with you to seminary in the morning?
Why not?
Because then it would be pet seminary.
Oh my gosh. We knew we had to go there. Oh,
Thank you. You heard it
that's
here
good.
first.
Well, what do you guys think, though, about the fact that, unlike our parents, people are now saying, gosh, I don't know. They're looking at their kids and their kids' health and mental health in a different way. And they're weighing it against their eternal salvation, I guess, and tried to figure it out. I thought that was really just a shift and very interesting.
All these stories, by the way, whether it's the general public criticizing the church with the temples, whether it's people deciding to go against what Elder Oaks says about the priesthood ban, whether it's parents and kids standing up for their own health when it comes to early morning seminary, what I'm noticing across the entire church is that the membership is developing the fortitude and wherewithal to sort of stand their own internal ground and not allow the church to manipulate them into taking the church's position. And I think the church doesn't even recognize that it's sort of done that. And the consequences of that are going to be far reaching over the next decade or two.
That is a really great observation that's illustrated right here. You're right, with the stories that we individually chose, and yet they have this bigger framework. And another common denominator is that in a lot of these articles, they say, we asked the church for comment, and there is no comment, right?
Right.
They're
Exactly.
silent.
We submitted questions, and the church says, let them eat cake.
Yes, exactly.
We don't
So
have
I
to
wonder
respond
how
to you.
long that will be a viable response, a non-response.
Yeah.
It's a good question.